6E 10 Terrifying Horror Stories.
A few years ago, my boyfriend and I bought a house. He was in charge of the new construction, converting the kitchen into a master bedroom, while I'm on wallpaper removal duty. The previous owner papered everything on the wall and the ceiling. Removing it was brutal, but oddly satisfying. Best feeling is getting a long peel, similar to when you peel your skin after having a sunburn. I don't know about you, but I kinda make a game out of peeling. Kind of on the hunt for the longest piece before it rips. Under a corner section of paper in every room is a person's name written and a date. Curiosity got the best of me one night when I googled one of the names and discovered the person was actually a missing person. The missing date matching the date under the wallpaper. The next day, I made a list of all the names and dates. Sure enough, each name was for a missing person, with dates to match. We notified the police, who naturally sent out a forensics team. I overheard one of the forensic team members say, "Yep, it's human." Human? What's human? Ma'am, where's the material you removed from the walls already? This wasn't wallpaper you were removing. He had been given the watch on his 10th birthday. It was an ordinary grey plastic wristwatch, in every respect except the fact that it was counting down. That's all the time you have left in the world, son. Use it wisely. And indeed he did. As the watch ticked away, the boy, now a man, lived his life to the fullest. He climbed mountains and swam oceans. He talked and laughed and lived and loved. The man was never afraid, for he knew exactly how much time he had left. Eventually, the watch began its final countdown. The old man stood looking over everything he had done, everything he had built. 5. He shook his hands with his old business partner, the man who had been a long-time friend. 4. His dog came and licked his hand, earning a pat on its head for its companionship. 3. He hugged his son, knowing that he had been a good father. 2. He kissed his wife on her forehead one last time. And 1. The man smiled and closed his eyes. Then, nothing happened. The watch beeped once and turned off. The man stood standing there, very much alive. You would think in that moment he would have been overjoyed. Instead, for the first time in his life, the man was scared. I used to go for walks at night to clear my head. Every step I take, I could hear my shoes crunching against the sidewalk. One night I was walking, and I noticed I had stepped on something slightly squishy and hard. My shoe had stopped making its usual noise. What an odd thing to be concerned about, right? I began walking again, only to hear a set of second footsteps every time I had walked. I got scared and on edge, and began to run home in a panic. When I got home, I had simply stepped on a pebble that was wedged between the bottom of my shoe. I pulled it out and realized it was a tooth. I went wide-eyed and dropped it in shock. I heard a knock at the door, saying, "Excuse me, you have something that belongs to me." I looked through the peephole, only to see a man with a face white as snow, with my shoe print on his face, with wide, white eyes, smiling, missing a tooth. I'm 23 years old, and I live in my own house. I'm pretty proud of myself for being a homeowner at such a young age. My house is a standard house, 2 bedrooms, living room, basement, attic, kitchen, etc., etc. However, I used to hear odd noises at night. I awoke one morning to see a handprint on my wall in the hallway below the attic. I brushed it off as maybe it was me stumbling around at night trying to use the bathroom. However, I was curious, so I set up a camera in my hallway, facing my bedroom. The next morning, I reviewed the footage I recorded. I had a sigh of relief to know I just recorded myself sleepwalking around my house. My hand touched roughly the same place I had found the handprint earlier, but as I reviewed the footage closer, I noticed something or someone standing behind me. Smiling demonically, peeking over my shoulder, I gasped in shock. I stayed at a friend's house for the rest of the week and moved out the following week. My friends that helped me move searched high and low in the house, but found no one. However, when we went to the attic to get a few empty boxes, we found finger paintings of hands displayed in the far dark side of my attic. When I was 10, I used to look at people when my parents and I would pull up next to them at a stoplight while driving. I would peer over to the person next to us, and I was usually greeted with a smile from a man or a woman or another child in the back seat. You know, things kids would do to pass the time during boring road trips. I remember pulling up to a car that gave me a bad feeling. Nonetheless, I still peered over. At first, I spotted nobody in the driver's seat, and my heart began racing. I really had an active imagination as a kid, so I automatically thought, ghost car driving by itself. But it turns out the person was driving. He was just leaning back trying to reach for something in the back seat. Me still staring at the driver's window, as he rose back up, he saw me, smiled, and winked. And as the light turned green, we began to drive away. I smiled back, until I saw a woman pressed up against the back window with messy hair and duct tape over her mouth, with her hands against the back window, staring back at me in terror as we turned and drove away. I told my parents, and they reported it to the police. It turns out I helped catch an infamous kidnapper in my city. That easily could have been me in the back seat. I was watching urban exploration videos on YouTube, and it got me excited and wanted to explore my old house for secret passages. So, I got to looking, running my hands along the old interior brick, looking for hidden switches or levers. Until my surprise, I actually came across an old brick that when I pulled it, a little 4x4 door opened up in the wall. I crawled through it. It was really dark, so I flicked my phone's flashlight on. My flashlight illuminated the semi-spacious room. In the room, I found a bed with an old rustic medieval chains anchored to the floor. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I slowly backed out and closed the secret door. If anyone knows what this was used for, could you please tell me? Oddly chilling. I don't know why I looked up, but when I did, I saw him there. He stood against my window, his forehead rested against the glass, and his eyes were still and light, and he smiled, a lipstick-red cartoonish grin, and he just stood there in the window. My wife was upstairs sleeping. My son was in his crib, and I couldn't move. I was frozen. I watched him looking past me through the glass. Oh no. Please. His smile never moved, but put his hand up and slid it down the glass, watching me. With matted hair and yellowish skin and a face through the window, I couldn't do anything. I just stayed there, frozen, feet still. He kept looking into my home as his face stood, pressed against the glass, against my window. My house is old, and we believed it to be haunted. When my family and I first moved in, I I immediately got a cold, bad feeling about the basement. I was curious one day, and I found an odd hole in the wall, behind these old candles that had been burned down to a melted pile of wax on an old plank of wood style bookshelf. In the little hole was a creepy looking doll, a rusted fork, a Ouija board that looked older than the house itself, and a date written on a piece of paper, April 29th, 1879. After I touched and discovered these items, weird, strange things began to happen around my house. I would see shadow people in the reflection of my TV screen, or I would hear weird laughter coming from the basement during the night. I even came home one day to a pile of flies all gathered on the back door. Then, one day it all stopped. And I don't know what scares me more or less, since maybe whatever is here is planning something more terrifying. I used to take the bus to and from work, and one day, I was on the bus coming home from a really late shift. I noticed someone had left a black wooden box on the bus's very back seat. Some little voice in my head was telling me to take it, so I gave in to the curiosity and snagged it. The box was sealed with a white and reddish candle wax. Once again, curiosity got the best of me, and when I got home, I pried it open to see what was inside. When I opened it, I was a little disappointed, only to find an old-looking handheld mirror sitting in the bottom of the box. I could see my emotionless face staring back at me, but when I blinked, my reflection didn't. I started making different facial expressions. My face just remained emotionless in the reflection of the mirror. I kept staring, and my reflection's eyes staring at me started turning black. I got really freaked out and slammed the box shut. I'm never opening that goddamn thing again.
大丈夫でしょ。だって君弱い